All right, you guys, here we go. We're just making a quick little video on this lab right here, Stickleback Genetics Lab. On here, you'll see that, as you can see, we've got our lab this is what you'll actually turn into me, is this document right here. These two are resources that you will use, information, data that you will gather from. Then this right here, once it renders, once I push save, it'll be a quick little video that you'll want to watch later on after I explain it. Okay, so if you want to, you can watch it right now, give you like a little basic background of stickleback fish, or you could wait until a little bit later in this video and I'll have you watch it anyways. Okay, all right, so let me pull up my stuff here. Okay, so what you guys will be doing today is analyzing a specific trait in stickleback fish. Now, these stickleback fish, they found them that they live in both aquatic or in marine life, and also in freshwater locations. Okay, and what another interesting phenomena that they have observed is that in marine locations, these stickleback fish have a unique trait that is not found in those that are in freshwater locations, and it's these pelvic spines. And so they have these hard keratinized spines that protrude out of their body in during certain situations that they're in. And you can start to think about, well, why do these fish have those? And obviously it's something, they serve as a defense mechanism for them against large predatory fish. And you can just imagine that fish, when it eats one of these pelvic spines, it's going to hurt as it's swallowing down, because these things are just going to scratch the living daylights out of their esophagus or whatever. And so that will be the last time that they try to eat a stickleback fish. And so you can see evolutionarily why these have been have evolved in these fish as a defense mechanism. But what's interesting is, why do freshwater fish not have these? Do they not have predators? And what they've actually found, and when you guys watch the video, it kind of talks about this, but yeah, they don't have predators there. And so and so evolution has taken effect there as well, when we see that in the opposite direction. So anyways, kind of interesting when you're looking at that. So we're going to be looking at how these this trait is inherited, because it is an inherited genetic trait. And you can see over here, I've got some different sets of cards. We've got the F1 cards, and what these are, so just a refresher, F1 meaning that they are the generation coming right after the parent generation. And then we also have the F2 fish, which is the generation that came from the F1 fish, right? And so we'll be looking at that a little bit, at several generations, to see how these traits are inherited. And the one thing I wanted to do real fast is let you guys help you guys point out what these pelvic spines look like. So if you're looking at this picture right here, you can see these pelvic spines right there. They've kind of been dyed red to help you guys see those. Anyways, but you can see that all of them on this picture, or on this first page, have pelvic spines. But if we look at these ones right here, the F2 fish, we can see some that don't, right? So these ones right here do not have pelvic spines. These do not have pelvic spines, no pelvic spines, no pelvic spines. This one does. This one's got pelvic spines, and so does this one. And so you can see, I just wanted to point those out so when you guys start to count, you can see what those really look like. So what I want you to do is pause my video, and I want you to watch that video that's linked, that's embedded into the assignment. And and then come back when you're done watching. Okay. So hopefully you've watched the making of the fittest, evolving, switching, evolving bodies, that's been linked there. Now you're ready to move on. Okay, maybe you have a little basic background of these fish now. So in part one, what you'll be doing is, first you're going to make a hypothesis. You're going to determine which one do you think is the dominant phenotype. Is it to have spines or not to have spines? And so we know that marine fish have spines. And so we want you to, so you'll mark that. We know that Bear Paw Lake don't have spines, so you'd put a mark right there, okay? Now, because of that, what they've done is they've taken a fish from the marine environment and a fish from a bear paw lake. This is your parent generation. So if I have my highlights, that's cool. So if I have my little highlighter here, where's my paper at? There we go. Is it not going to let me? Oh, dang. Okay, never mind. I thought it would. Okay, so if you look at this, there's two fish right here, the marine and bear paw lake. These are both, it tells you that they are homozygous parents. So a reminder what homozygous means. It means that they are the same. And so right here in this little notch, we would want to put that. And so let's say that my hypothesis was that to have spines is a recessive trait. So if my marine fish would be, and I'm going to use S for this, little s, and then my bear paw lake, since it's a dominant trait to not have spines, would be big S, big S. Okay, now that's just my hypothesis. You can make your hypothesis however you want. Okay, now number 3, what is your hypothesis for which phenotype is dominant, which one is recessive? So you just state that out, what you just put there, and based on your hypothesis, what would you expect the results to be if with a cross between a marine and bear paw lake stickleback parents? Make your prediction using the Punnett square to the right. So you can just write on this, or you could just type it in. Yeah, I'd have to tab over and stuff. But anyways, these two parents, so I'd have little s, big S, filled all out. And then I could answer the questions. You'll do the same thing here. What would be the ratio of stickleback fish with pelvic spines to stickleback spines in the first generation? So, so according to this question right here, here's my two parents. What ratio would have spines in the F1 generation, which is shown right here? Well, it would be 0% because they all received a dominant allele from the bear paw lake. And so I would see my F1 generation, according to my hypothesis that I have right now, to be 0% to have spines. And then those that don't have spines would be 100%. Now, looking at this next one, what you'll do is you would then take two of these fish, so big S, little s, cross it, and I would get a big S right here, big S in these two, and then little s right here. And so then what would be the ratio stickleback with spines? Well, we'd have a 3 without spines, according to my hypothesis, and 1 that would have spines right there, so a 3-to-1 ratio. And so now, here's this little math question. So if you had 40 offspring in the F2 generation, approximately how many would you expect to have pelvic spines and how many to not have pelvic spines? So according to my hypothesis that spines is a recessive trait, I would see a 3-to-1 ratio, 3 without spines, 1 with spines. So if 40 out of 40, what would be my ratio? 3-to-1. So I'd have 30 that did not have spines, and then 10 that would have spines in my F2 generation. Okay, so again, I don't expect you to use my hypothesis. If you want to use that spines is dominant, then you do it that way. Okay, but I just walked through this first little part. So now what you're going to do is actually gather the data from these two, from the actual data that they gathered, to see how well does your hypothesis correlate to the actual data that was gathered. And so what you'll do is you'll go through in the F1 generation, you're just going to count how many have spines, okay? And you'd put that there. How many don't have spines? Put that there. Then you'd go to the F2, count how many, and this one's got a lot more fish, okay? So you'll have out of 40 fish here, just to get you starting to think about this one right here, right? Number 8, because we'll actually see if my hypothesis or if our hypotheses were correct or not. And so if you want to, you can pause the video and you can fill that out. Okay, so you should have some data here. And I will tell you right now that the data that you gather should already tell you, hey, Mr. Crook, your hypothesis was wrong, right? Because what we see in the F1 generation is that all of them, if you look at this, all of these have stickleback spines, or have spines. And so it'd be 16 right here, 0 right there. And so right there, I could automatically tell you that my hypothesis was wrong, because we said that it would have 0 with spines and all 16 would not have spines according to that. So I already know that my hypothesis is wrong, but I'm going to keep going, and it's okay. If my hypothesis is wrong, that's okay. I just need to have the data to back up my claim to say, hey, my hypothesis was incorrect. This is the data that shows that it is not correct. Okay, and so then you'll make some ratios here. Okay, then you would answer that one right there. Now what you're going to do, and this is what I wanted to spend a little bit of time, because there is a question on the test that you guys will take at the end where you'll have to do a little bit of math. And so first thing is, when you're looking at this is your cross. So this would be your F1 and your F1 generation, right? So we had a total of 16. We know that 16 had pelvic spines and then 0 did not have pelvic spines. So I just fill that out, get the total, and voila. And then you can answer these questions. This one's pretty self-explanatory. Right here now, though, this is the F2 generation. So what he's done, this is actually data from multiple different experiments that he did. This is your experiment. And so you'd put, I think we had 40 fish total in the year F2. Determining on how many you counted, you'll have some with pelvic spines and some without. Get that ratio, and I want you to get a ratio for each one of these. Now, one thing to help you to get, anyways, yeah, you guys got that. And then if you don't, hop into my live session and we can work through that together as well. Okay, so right here, this extension activity, just because it is an extension activity, I still want you to do it because it's having you do some chi-square analysis. Okay, and so I want to go over this one more time. It's a big thing in my classes, statistics. And even though we're not in session, I still want to carry out that expectation that you guys will be doing some statistical analysis rather than just assumptions there. And so what you'll be doing here is filling out this table. And I wanted to just get you guys started on this. And so I don't know why it's being a pain in the butt. Okay, so perform a chi-square analysis test on the data for the total population in Table 3. So here's Table 3 right here. So depending on your totals that you calculate here, that's what you're going to be using. All right, and so what you'll be doing is first you'll want to put your two phenotypes. So we know we have stickleback fish, and then right here, I'm sorry, this thing did not. We have no spines. Okay, so there's my two phenotypes, and now what we're going to do is for the observed, we're going to put what we observed. So how many did have spines? So let's pretend that I have some data here, and I'm saying that I had 120 that have spines, and this is not accurate. I have not counted these, and 50 without spines. Okay. So again, just a reminder, we had 120, and we had, what did I say, 50? Good. So then we'd have to say, okay, well, what is the expected values? Well, the good thing is we've already calculated or made an explanation of what we would expect for the F2. And we did it right here. And we expected a 3-to-1 ratio of whatever is the dominant trait. We know that stickleback spines is the dominant, or to have the spines. I'm going to change that actually to spines. Okay, so we know that to have spines is the dominant trait, and so I would expect to have a 75% expectation right there. All right, and so out of a total, we have 120 plus. In my experimental data here, I have 170 spines or fish total. So if I pull up a calculator, I can then start to calculate the expected, right? So if I have 170 total fish, and I know it's a 3-to-1 ratio, what would that be? Well, all I have to do is just times this by 0.75, and that tells me. And obviously you can't have half a fish, so I'm going to round up. So I'm going to say 128 fish I would expect to have spines, and then I would do the same thing. So 170 times that by 0.25 to get the other set, and that would be 43. Okay, so these are my expected values. So then what you do is you just a refresher on chi-square. You take the observed minus the expected to get that value. This will be a negative number, right? It'd be -8. We square that number. So I'm going to walk through this, and again, don't copy my numbers down because they are not correct. Okay, but just to have you guys get a feel for this. So 50 minus 43, that is 7. So then what I'm going to do right here, it kind of shows you step by step. So we're going to square that and divide it again by the expected. So we have -8. 8 negative times by 8 negative equals 64. So I just squared it. Okay. And now what I'm going to do is divide that number by the expected value, which is 128.5. Okay. I have a 0.5 there. That one. Now let's see what this one would be. Okay. So I would take 7, square it, right? So 7 times by 7, 49. I'm going to divide that by my expected value of 43. So for that one, I got a 1.14. Okay. And so voila, there we got that. And then I just take, all you do right here is you just add those two up. So 1.14 plus 0.5, that gives me a 1.63. Okay. And of course it doesn't want to, I don't know what is going on here. I'm just going to insert a text box. And if you guys want to do this too, you're more than willing to. Where is it? Text box. There it is. Yeah, I just want that. I just want it really small. I don't need it big. I'm just going to drag it and put it right there. Okay. If this doesn't look pretty, you guys, that is A-okay, right? What was my value? 1.64. Okay. 0.64. Okay. And I want to do it just like behind the text. Yeah, there we go. That way it doesn't make it look weird. Okay, awesome. So 1.64 is my total chi-square value. Now, just a reminder, now that I have this value, what do I got to do? Well, first of all, my chi-square value is 1.64, and then I've got to figure out my degrees of freedom. And so right here, I can just tell you my degrees of freedom will be 1, okay, because I have two columns. I'm looking at just two different things, n minus 1, so 1, okay? So now let's pull up the chi-square values. I will link this to you guys. You don't have to try and find it. That's not what I wanted. This is the one. Okay, so we have 1 degree of freedom. Remember, we always look at the 0.05 right here. And I got a value of 3. And so the critical value for this is 3.841. So if I go back to this, I got a 1.64. So 1.64, this is showing a critical value of 3.84. Where does my number fall? Is it left of that number or right of that number? And obviously you can see it's left of that number. It's found right in here. And so what I can say statistically is because my values is less than that value right there, my data is significant, meaning that my data, it is close enough that I could say that spines is dominant, no spines is not dominant. Okay, so I can say, so this supports this value right here. Since it's less, it shows that there is a statistical relationship between these values, or in other words, that there is a relation, that there is a huge statistical difference between that there is no statistical difference between my observed and my expected, right? Because we expected to have 128. What I observed in my hypothetical world is 120. These two, basically what it's saying is these two values are close enough to say that what you hypothesized was correct. The spines is dominant, no spines is recessive. Okay, and so you'll use that to answer it. It's going to have you do this a few times just to test, to practice this. Oh, guess what? It's got the critical value right here. So I am not going to link that to you. It is right there for you to use. Okay. Anyways, if you guys have any questions, please let me know. All right. But again, I just wanted to go over the chi-square stuff for you so that you could know how to do those when the time comes on the test and things where you need to do that. So anyways, I'll talk to you guys later.